welcome back to the VIA podcast, exploring travel in the West. I'm Michelle Donati, and my co-host Mitty Hicks is joining me from, where are you exactly?
I just want to warn our listeners that I'm indeed listening to you, but behind me is the rain because I'm in Ada rainforest here in Guyana in South America.
So you're telling me if we hear animal sounds in the background, those are not coming from our guests, those are coming from South America?
So yes, I'm here in Guyana to bird watch for a story.
Oh my gosh.
And the rainforest is right there.
Amazing. I hear that, Mitty.
Yeah.
I hear rainforest birds. Oh, it's so cool.
Who knew a otter or a caiman could, make you feel fuzzy inside. So it's been incredible.
So today we're talking about ethical animal encounters, and we're talking to an animal expert.
Alison Hermance is the Director of Communications at WildCare. It's a wildlife hospital and nature education center in the San Francisco Bay Area. Through her work with the nonprofit, she has helped people connect with animals for more than 2 decades.
In her free time, she helps reunite fallen baby owls with their parents, and she fosters orphan skunks and squirrels, raising them until they're ready to live in the wild.
Alison Hermance, welcome to the VIA podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Okay, Alison, I'm going to jump right in. I've heard of people fostering dogs and cats. I have never heard of anyone fostering baby skunks.
Oh, I highly recommend it. Don't make good pets, so you don't want to make one into a pet. But when they're little and before their eyes are open, they're not really able to spray yet. Baby skunks smell just a little bit like dark chocolate.
What?
They have that musky scent combined with a little bit of milky formula, and it smells like dark chocolate. And they're just marvelous animals. So WildCare is a wildlife hospital, and we're a nature education center, and we are located in San Rafael, California, which is just north of San Francisco. We're in the Bay Area. And so as part of the wildlife hospital, we admit about 3,500 injured and orphaned animals every year, and we admit the majority of them during the spring and summer because those are baby animals that for one reason or another have become orphaned. If you volunteer at a wildlife care center like WildCare, you can very quickly work yourself into a position where you're fostering baby animals like skunk squirrels, raccoons, bats, you name it.
I like that you said they're not good for pets, but I think that goes back to the point of getting to know these animals. And there's no better way to do that than with animal sanctuaries, right?
Yeah, having a place where you can actually visit and, as we say at WildCare, have a nose-to-beak experience with a local wild animal, that really, really is a way for you to learn about the animals that share your environment, and if you're traveling, the animals that live in a particular region that you're visiting.
I want to know, what are the qualities that make ethical sanctuaries? What does ethical even mean as it relates to an animal sanctuary?
There are a lot of different things that go into a determination of whether a sanctuary that you want to visit is ethical. And I've wrestled with this too, because whenever I travel, I try to go and visit a place that has local wild animals, but you really want to make sure that you're doing your homework before you go. There are a couple of different entities that have accreditation. There's a Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, the American Sanctuary Association are two that you can look up and see if the sanctuary you're looking to visit is on that list. Another really big thing is making sure that the place you're visiting isn't forcing their animals to perform or forcing their animals to interact with people.
I'm in Arizona. Would love to know, were there some other ethical wildlife sanctuaries, whether that's in Utah or Arizona? What would be your top 3 or 4 places aside from WildCare that you'd recommend for one of these really unique experiences?
One of the places that I always visit is Kanab, Utah, which is down in southern Utah. And that is where there is a sanctuary called Best Friends. Their slogan is "No More Homeless Pets." They are a sanctuary for homeless animals of many, many species. They have like a pig area, cat and dogs. They take care of horses. They take care of parrots and bunnies. And they are a sanctuary for animals that don't have another place to go. And they have a strong adoption component as well.
Oh, I love that.
Their Wild Friends is their wildlife arm, and they do wildlife rehabilitation, which is taking in injured and orphaned animals and providing programs to you as a visitor if you come through their Best Friends Sanctuary. It's an amazing place to be in Kanab anyway. It's one of the most beautiful places in the whole world.
Actually, Alison, I have seen Best Friends Sanctuary. I traveled to southern Utah a few years ago, and we did some hiking right next door. There's Belly of the Dragon, which my kids absolutely loved. There's also the Moki Caverns, which is the right next door, and you can get some great hiking in. But it was because of that hike that I learned about Best Friends.
Nice.
And I tried to see if we could also sneak into the sanctuary, and we couldn't do a last minute visit, which I totally understand. But
yeah, I think you have to plan ahead for sure.
You do have to plan ahead, which is a great travel tip. I've continued to follow this sanctuary, but the way that they name the animals at rescue, you can't help but laugh as you're looking through the names. So I was looking through the names a few weeks ago, and there were two cats that needed to be, that were rescued, Tom Haverford and Ron Swanson. I'm a huge Parks and Rec fan, so I was like, done. Like, I will take those cats.
Best Friends really is one of the great options to have that nose to beak, that face-to-face experience with animals of many varieties. Absolutely.
What other sanctuaries are some of your favorites?
So another one that I think is really interesting, and it's a little bit different, is an organization called Animal Ark, and they are actually located in Reno, Nevada. And they are a sanctuary. It's not specifically like Wild Care, which focuses on native and migratory wild animals. The Animal Ark is an organization that provides permanent homes for wild animals, both native and exotic, that would not be able to survive in the wild or are simply not able to be in the wild. And they have tigers, they have bears, they have foxes, they have raccoons, they have raptors like a great horned owl. And they have created homes for these animals that allow them to live in comfort and permanently at their location. One of the things that Wild Care teaches, and Animal Ark and Best Friends as well, is that wild animals do not make good pets. Mm-hmm. And it is such a shame and so difficult to see animals like the tigers that have come into the Animal Ark, like the foxes that they have there. These are animals that somebody found when they were young, or they were even raised in captivity, and they were kept as pets, which means that they are not capable of surviving in the wild, and they would not survive in the wild if someone tried to release them. Yeah. There are so many domestic animals that need homes. Mm-hmm. Please look for a domestic cat or dog that needs a home instead of taking an animal out of the wild. And Animal Ark does a really good job of that education component, providing good homes for their animals, providing enrichment for their animals, making sure that they're not bored, that they have proper nutrition, and really providing that experience that is so important for an animal that's going to be in captivity for the rest of his life.
So sometimes when I'm scrolling on Instagram, I see people taking selfies with buffalo. I mean, you'll see people at state parks trying to get close to, like, I don't know, a moose on Instagram. Do you have any tips for keeping animals safe and even yourself?
So anytime you're interacting with wild animals in the wild, there are two considerations. The first, of course, is your safety. And then the second consideration is the safety of the animals. And this whole thing where people are taking selfies of themselves with wildlife and trying to get as close as possible to wildlife, it just hurts my heart, because it's not good for the animals to have you trying to get close. And as a person, you're probably going to get injured because the animal is going to respond in a way that is, get away from me. I don't want you near me. Another really interesting thing is that I have my eyes in front of my face. If you think about other animals that have eyes in the front of their faces, you have predators. Mm-hmm. So in any circumstance that you are sneaking up on a wild animal, so you can do that selfish, listen to me. So you can do that selfie shot. You are giving that animal the experience of a predator. So really, if you want to take a selfie with an animal, take yourself really close and the animal really far away, making sure that you're not causing a disturbance that leads to the animal flushing or moving or even looking up at you and changing his behavior because of you.
That's great advice, Alison. I want to ask about animals in the West in particular. So can you tell us about some of those unique and fascinating animals that if we are going to travel, what makes the West unique when it comes to animal encounters?
One of my very favorites, I have to say, is the Gila monster.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Biddy and I were talking about Gila monsters before.
I don't like reptiles, and I especially don't like that one. Alison, where does your love for this lizard come from?
Apparently, I have strange taste in animals. I don't know. So I've always been a bit of a crazy reptile person. The Gila monster, my friend, is mostly going to be spotted in the really hot desert. So Arizona, the very far tip of California, and also in the lower Nevada desert. There's something about that coloration. So the black and orange coloration is so interesting. And he's a big lizard.
But
the Gila monster is one of only 2 venomous lizards in, I think, the Northern Hemisphere, but certainly in North America. But he's not super venomous.
Okay. That's good to know.
Really, the only way a human is going to die from a Gila monster bite is if you happen to be allergic to Gila monsters.
Alison, like that, you're not helping your case here. It sounds terrifying.
Alison, something I read that I believe came from you, you described a Gila monster as having a hunger and blood sugar regulating hormone that has been synthesized in the lab to create Ozempic. I had no idea. That blew my mind.
Right? I know a bunch of people that are on Ozempic, and I have told every single one of them. I don't know how you feel about Ozempic, but there's the reason that you should be excited about the Gila monster. And I think one of the reasons is that I like them so much is because it's so fun to encourage people to learn about animals they don't know they necessarily like. I think the American West especially is kind of a daunting place to visit. Driving through southern Utah, especially, miles and miles of sagebrush. And you're thinking, is there really anything out here? And then all of a sudden, as you're driving and you look out to the right, and there is a herd of pronghorn antelope. And those are some of the most interesting animals you're ever going to see. The pronghorn, actually, they're not antelope. They're called pronghorns. They look like antelope, but they are apparently the only existing member of their family. The closest living extant relative that the pronghorn has is actually the giraffe.
Oh, wow.
They're actually the fastest land mammal in North America. And so one thing that I love to point out, again, when you're in the American West, you're doing a lot of driving probably. And then I also want you to keep your eyes on the sky. And I want you to look for circling groups of birds. And when you have a whole bunch of birds, and they're often turkey vultures, which are extremely social animals, and they love to fly around together, you're also going to have hawks in there. You're also going to sometimes have eagles in there. That circling bowl of birds is called a kettle. And the behavior of circling all together and riding those thermals, that is called kettling. So when you're driving through the American West and you see a big kettle of vultures and hawks circling, appreciate how cool that is. They're rising up on those thermals. All of a sudden, this space that you're driving through becomes so much more interesting because you've seen that animal and connected with that animal. Like, for instance, you have condors, California condors. Like, you want to see an iconic animal that is just truly mind-boggling. The biggest bird you're ever going to see is that California condor.
Yes.
Fascinating creatures. They very nearly went extinct in 1987. There were only 27 California condors left.
Wow.
And so there was a program that captured the remaining wild California condors, took them into, there's a zoo in Los Angeles and one other center that they raised them, and began this program of raising birds in captivity and then releasing them back to the wild. And this was after, of course, ongoing work to ban the use of lead pellets for hunting because these birds are very susceptible to lead poisoning. But anyway, Fast forward to 2022 was the last number I found, and I think it was 500 condors are now living.
Wow.
And apparently doing quite well. And man, those birds are incredible. So a few different places that you can see condors. You can see them at the Grand Canyon. You can see them at Pinnacles Park in California, kind of in the higher mountains in central California. You can see them.
Oh, yeah.
That is such a cool animal. So another animal that I just love having the opportunity to see is the moose.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you guys have spent a lot of time around moose, but they are just so cool. They're so big. They live in creeks and marshes and swamps. And they also have those really long legs, which allow them to be able to walk through water. I had a very intense experience with a moose one time. I was in Wyoming and my family and I were on a canoeing trip down the Snake River. And we come around a bend and there was this gigantic adult male moose up to his knees. And the knee on a moose is a pretty deep part of the river.
Mm-hmm.
So we quickly paddled as far as we could over to the far side. And he looked up at us and you could see his jaws moving. He was chewing on that. And you could tell he was like,
oh, wow.
What is that? It was amazing. But they are gorgeous, amazing animals. You can see those certainly in Utah, but really Wyoming, the Grand Teton National Park is one of the best places to get a good moose experience.
This reminds me, can we talk about seasons? Is there the right time and the wrong time to see certain animals in the wild?
So I think for any animal species, there are going to be times when the animals are more active and the times when the animals are less active. Yellowstone National Park, for instance, in the summertime, I feel like you see a lot more bison. When I was there in late October a couple of years ago, the bison had all kind of spread out. I think they'd probably gone up into the hills. And so you didn't have nearly the same level of interactions or, sightings that you might have had. So, your Gila monsters, those guys are going to be the most active during the high summer. And
you will not find me on a mountain in Arizona in the summer for a few reasons. It's a million degrees, but also I do not care to have an interaction with the Gila monster. So you will only catch me hiking in the winter.
They're slow. He's just walking along, waving that fat tail.
I will have that adventure with you as long as you walk in front, Alison.
I will do that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I will take care of the venomous lizards for you. Absolutely.
Alison, you have extensive experience with animals in what you do and how you volunteer at WildCare. Do you have a dream destination in the West for an animal encounter, someplace at the top of your list that you haven't been yet that you're just dying to get to?
Oh, can I do one that I have been to that I do every year?
Sure. Go for it.
So one of the things that my family comes to California every year for Christmas, and one of the things that we do every Christmas is we go out to Point Reyes National Seashore. And right around Christmas is when the adult male elephant seals start coming onto shore at Drake's Beach. And Drake's Beach used to be like a normal beach that you could go and have a picnic with your family.
Mm-hmm.
And some parts of the year that is still true. The rangers used to have to chase the elephant seals off the beach every day, especially during the winter season when the males are coming up onto the beach. And they used to do that so they kept the beach open for people. But this was apparently a beach that the elephant seals had historically used and historically really wanted to be on. So it was during one of the government shutdown periods a bunch of years ago, like 2017, 2018, that there was no one to chase the elephant seals away.
Oh, no.
And so they started coming up onto the shore and onto the beach. And an adult male elephant seal is a massive, massive animal. They're like the size of a Volkswagen Bug or bigger.
Oh,
They're
my
just
God.
That's
huge.
I was going to ask.
And apparently the rangers made the very prudent decision and also the animal appropriate decision that they're like, okay, I think we missed our opportunity to chase them away this year.
Yeah.
And so now that Drake's Beach is actually a thriving community of elephant seals. But right around Christmas, there's usually only a couple of male elephant seals and they've hauled themselves up onto the shore. And then as the females start coming up a few weeks later, you'll have the females starting to come up on that same beach and the males will start fighting. And so the rangers close off the beach so you can see it from, there's several vantage points. And one year I went and the males were fighting. And it was like two Volkswagen buses charging at each other. It is
no.
the
my
most
gosh.
Oh, no.
amazing thing. So like December, January, February, you've never seen anything like it. That is something that it is just incredible.
You mentioned the elephant seals. Can we talk about some more aquatic animal life?
Yeah.
What about aquariums? Are those typically ethical animal experiences, or what do you look for when it comes to an aquarium? How do you get more intentional encounters with sea life?
Mhm.
Finding an ethically situated aquarium can be a little bit more of a challenge. And one of the reasons that that is a challenge is because many, if not all, of the specimens in most aquariums have had to be wild caught, removed out of their natural lives, and put in a captive situation. So aquariums, it's very hard to have specimens that are not wild caught captives. And so for that reason, I struggle with aquariums a lot. I will say that one of the aquariums that I really, really like and do highly recommend is the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They do such an amazing job with the animals that they have in care. They work so hard to make sure that those animals have the best possible lives. And I know that they do a tremendous amount of conservation. And what the Monterey Bay Aquarium does so well is education about the environment, that when you're at the aquarium, you're looking out the window at the actual bay where all of those animals that you just walked underneath, all of those animals are right there. It's not a tropical aquarium. It's specifically focusing on the environment that's right outside their windows. So you go to the aquarium, you learn all about these animals, and then the next day you rent a kayak and you can go out and paddle in the bay. And if you're very quiet and don't make a nuisance of yourself, you can grab a piece of kelp and you can wrap it across the front of your kayak, and you can just sit there and let the waves go up underneath you and ride the swells as they come in and wait for the sea otters to come paddling around. And they will, like almost every time I've been out there.
That sounds so fun.
It's so cool. And so that combination of the opportunity to go to the aquarium, learn all about the species that are in the water right there, and then go out in your kayak and have that experience. That is something that you just don't want to miss. That's one of my favorite things for sure.
And what about the whales as well, the orcas?
Oh yeah, so that is actually, so you asked earlier about an opportunity, something that I would really like to do that I haven't done, and one of those things would be to go up and kayak in an area where the orcas are. And certainly I know off the coast of Vancouver, I know there are areas in both Oregon and Washington as well where you can take a boat trip, or you can also do a kayak experience and possibly be able to see the orcas. Those guys are so incredibly cool and so beautiful. I am afraid I do not know when the best times are to go and see orcas, but they will certainly have seasonal shifts, and you'll want to do some research and come up with a good calendar opportunity for that.
Allison, can you tell our audience why encounters like these matter? What is the benefit of having an interaction with an animal for all species involved?
So I think that the opportunity to meet and interact with especially a wild animal up close is so incredibly valuable and so incredibly educational. And I think about, we have a desert tortoise who was taken as a pet, and he was not able to be released because of that. And he lives full time at Wildcare. And I was watching one of the education classes that we had come through Wildcare, and this was a group of young kids, but this is true for adults as well. And one of the best things about the desert tortoise is that he's all brown and gray and green, but he has a bright pink tongue. It's just the most amazing thing. And I was watching these two little kids, and they were seeing this desert tortoise eat cucumber, and he would open up his mouth and that bright pink tongue would show, and those kids were just floored. And I watched the parents too, and they were like, oh my gosh, look at his mouth. And that made that tortoise, it made him almost a real person to the people that were watching. It made him someone that they could connect to.
Yeah.
And you're connecting with this animal on this physical, visceral, very, very intimate way. it's a lesson that those kids are never going to forget and their parents are never going to forget. And anyone that has had that nose to beak, nose to nose, close up, learn about an animal experience, it's just something you never forget. And if you learn about an animal, then you appreciate that animal. And if you appreciate that animal, then you want to protect that animal. And I think that's why these experiences are so incredibly valuable.
And that connection with the animal then deepens the connection with that destination, right? It helps you to just get to know that destination on a much more intimate level.
Absolutely. Connecting with that animal connects you with that place.
I love that.
Alison, thank you so much for being on the VIA podcast with us.
This has been so fun. I feel like I've talked about a lot of animals that maybe not everyone loves, but hopefully you've decided you like some of them after hearing some of the stories about them.
Hey, Mitty, do you know what time it is?
I hope this is the part where we hear from AAA members.
That's right. We've received so many member emails. Please keep them coming. We heard from AAA member John Galsavs from California. He said, I absolutely love the northeast coast of Vancouver Island, British Columbia, particularly the Johnston Strait area at Telegraph Cove and Port McNeill. This marine environment allows for many close encounters with animals as they are meant to be seen in the wild and in their natural state. I've done 4 multi-day sea kayaking trips here, which took me into the pathways of orcas' roaming patterns. My favorite was when the orca families would choose to interact with us and give us a thrill by swimming close by, in one instance, right under our kayaks. That sort of exciting and privileged rendezvous is only available in this type of environment.
First of all, John, incredible timing on the orcas. I hear about mid-July through mid-September is that sweet spot. And you have this story that not only inspires me to get up there, but it really, really just hones in on how much fun and safe it can be to have these animal encounters. What about you, Michelle?
I agree with you. And I love the way that John wrote this email. And when he said that the orca families would choose to interact with us and they swim under their kayaks, it sounds like he was able to observe these majestic creatures in their natural state. Mm-hmm. And that made for an even more enriching and memorable travel experience. We also heard from AAA member Pamela Craig from Arizona. Pamela writes, located next to Willow Lake Heritage Park Zoological Sanctuary is a small, lovely zoo filled with rescue animals, many that are native to the area. Their inhabitants include a black bear, a mountain lion, and a Canadian lynx, as well as bobcats, wolves, pronghorn sheep, and smaller animals like javelinas, ring-tailed lemurs, rabbits, and many more. The zoo also has a variety of educational programs throughout the week for different age groups, including art classes and full moon walks.
Thanks for the email, Pam, especially because I think it's a reminder that animal sanctuaries have something for everyone of all ages in your family. So I think that's important to know. You don't have to go alone.
By adding an ethical animal encounter to your next travel adventure, it can create an even deeper and more meaningful connection to your destination. Love your comments, questions, and especially your stories about travel in the West. Send us an email at viamail@viamagazine.com. Again, that email is viamagazine.com. You can also leave us a voicemail at 415-475-9350. Again, that phone number is 415-475-9350.
And don't be shy. You may hear your voicemail played on the podcast.
The VIA podcast is hosted by Mitty Hicks and Michelle Donati. That's me.
Produced by Whitney Fanoof, editor-in-chief of VIA, Katie Henry, managing editor of VIA, and editorial consultant April Kilcrease, alongside Dave Beasing and Jason Jackson of Sound That Brands.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the VIA podcast. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Discover more places to travel in the West at AAA.com/VIA. VIA Magazine is published by AAA Mountain West Group.
The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of AAA Mountain West Group or its personnel.